A house in the US for 5 grand? Sounds impossible, right? It feels like something out of the 1950s or a straight-up scam. But it's actually happening right now. Most people aren't supposed to know this, yet there are real American towns where you can buy an entire house for less than the price of a used Honda Civic. These are legitimate places with real residents and some seriously strange backstories explaining why property values crashed harder than Blockbuster's stock ever did. Here's the catch, though. These towns aren't just inexpensive. They come with a lot of baggage. We're talking abandoned railroad tunnels rumored to be haunted, long-forgotten axe murders, and entire zip codes quietly being snapped up by Wall Street investors. This isn't casual Zillow scrolling. This is the shadowy, under-the-radar side of American real estate. So the obvious question is, why would anyone actually live there? What most people never mention is that a few of these places are starting to bounce back, slowly finding new life. Others, though, still feel downright cursed. One town on this list will literally give you land for free, if you're bold enough to live with what's buried beneath it. And believe me, you are not prepared for what comes next. Wait until you hear about the town where buying a house could mean inheriting a ghost, or worse, becoming part of a tourist attraction. This isn't a fantasy, and it's definitely not a scam. It's a reality that almost no one talks about. Until now. Hit like so the algorithm knows I matter. Subscribe, because one day you might want out, and this channel is basically your emergency escape kit for a boring life. Now, let's break it all down. Number 10. Detroit, Michigan. Yes, Detroit. You can genuinely buy a house there for less than what most people spend on Starbucks in a year. And no, this isn't monopoly money or some fine print trick. This is real Detroit. As in, legally yours, deed in hand, keys in your pocket Detroit. The Motor City. The place that once powered the world, put America on wheels, and then slammed headfirst into one of the most dramatic economic collapses in modern history. What used to be an unstoppable industrial giant is now home to some of the cheapest housing prices in the entire country. It sounds like a scam when you first hear it, but it's not. People still live here. Some are even doing surprisingly well. The city has this raw, unfiltered energy, equal parts grit, stubborn pride, and determination, with a startup scene clawing its way out of the rubble like a very determined, very ironic hipster phoenix. Now here's where things start getting spicy. In certain neighborhoods, the median home price is under $10,000. Let that sink in. Vacancy rates hover above 20%, which means entire blocks sit empty, quiet, eerie, and waiting. And yet, somehow, rents are still going up. Detroit's overall cost of living sits about 9% below the national average, but utilities will hit your wallet harder than expected, and security cameras aren't a luxury, they're a requirement. Crime is the elephant in the room, so let's not dance around it. Violent crime clocks in at roughly 1,965 incidents per 100,000 people, which is about 5 times the national average. That's the risk side of the equation. But, and this is the twist, things are changing. Big names like Ford are back. Tech companies are quietly testing the waters. And if you dig around Reddit, you'll see locals saying things like, "Detroit isn't scary, it's just honest." You know exactly what kind of day you're having when you wake up and your car is still there. Buying property in Detroit is the easy part. Living there? That's where the real challenge begins. You'll either become a neighborhood legend who helps rebuild the community, or you'll wake up one morning to find your mailbox missing. Yes, that actually happens. Regularly. And we have to talk about the roads. Detroit doesn't really have potholes. It has geological features. I've seen craters that could swallow a Prius whole. Drivers learn to scan the pavement like survivalists, especially after a rough winter warm-up. Some residents have gotten creative, filling potholes with dirt and growing tomatoes in them. I wish I were joking. Welcome to urban farming Detroit style. What no one ever tells you is this. Detroit doesn't want sympathy. It wants effort. It wants people willing to show up and work. Moving here isn't just about buying a cheap house. It's about stepping into a gritty, ongoing urban experiment where nothing is guaranteed. And if you think this place is wild, buckle up, because the next town somehow turned weird into a competitive sport. Number 9. Flint, Michigan. Flint is one of those rare American cities where the house can cost less than the car sitting in the driveway, sometimes a lot less. We're talking about Flint, Michigan, the longtime home of General Motors, the birthplace of historic labor strikes, And, unfortunately, the city forever linked to one of the most infamous water crises in U.S. history. Flint has taken hit after hit, and somehow it's still standing, barely, but standing. Most people know Flint from grim headlines about lead-contaminated pipes and endless lawsuits. But there's another side people don't talk about as much: absurdly cheap housing. And yes, it comes with a very clear warning label. Let's look at the numbers. The median home price hovers around $45,000. No, that's not a typo. That's a real livable house, not a garage or a garden shed. The cost of living sits roughly 23% below the national average, and average rent is about $800 a month, with some neighborhoods dipping even lower. Now for the part that makes everyone hesitate. Flint's violent crime rate sits around 1,880 incidents per 100,000 people, roughly 4 times the national average. Unemployment has historically been brutal, although auto manufacturing has been slowly, painfully clawing its way back. One Reddit user summed it up perfectly. Living in Flint is like playing SimCity on hard mode with random disasters permanently switched on. You'll save a fortune on housing, but peace of mind costs extra. Want a house you can pay off in a few paychecks? Easy. Want to feel comfortable walking outside at night? That's the upgrade. Here's something nobody warns you about, though. Flint is intensely passionate about coney dogs, and completely unhinged when it comes to fireworks. A random Tuesday night in July can sound like a battlefield. On the 4th of July? Forget sleeping. Fireworks, lawn chairs, and near-death encounters with bottle rockets are basically a local pastime. Juneteenth celebrations in mid-Michigan recently wrapped up with a free fireworks show right in downtown Flint, because of course they did. Picture this. You step outside your $600 a month rental. Somewhere nearby, a lawnmower is running. A boombox is blasting 90s R&B. Someone is fixing a car in the street with a cigarette dangling from their mouth. It's loud. It's rough around the edges. It's undeniably gritty, but somehow it's also full of heart. So here's the real question. Would you live somewhere with rock-bottom rent if the crime rate made Batman reconsider his commute? Drop a yes or no in the comments, and be honest. Could you actually do it? And if you think Flint is chaotic, just wait until you hear about the place where the land is free. But the neighbors might not be alive. Number 8. McAllen, Texas. McAllen is one of the most affordable cities in the U.S., and somehow it's also one of the most misunderstood. Picture this. A Costco dropped right on the border, fell in love with mariachi music, and never looked back. Welcome to McAllen, Texas, a border city with palm trees, endless taco trucks, and housing prices so low they'll make your mortgage calculator short-circuit. The vibe is hard to pin down in the best way. It feels like Florida without the retirees, California without the sticker shock, and Arizona, but with actual culture everywhere you turn. Sitting right along the U.S.-Mexico border, McAllen is hot, humid, and quietly becoming a go-to spot for people who want their paycheck to go further without retreating to the middle of nowhere. Now let's talk numbers, because this is where it gets wild. Median home prices hover around $240,000, which is shockingly low for a city that has an international airport and multiple Target stores. The cost of living runs about 20% below the national average, and average rent lands near $850 a month. Unemployment is low, around 4%, thanks to steady jobs in logistics, healthcare, and cross-border commerce. And here's the kicker. McAllen has one of the lowest property tax burdens in Texas. Yes, that Texas. But this is where things get spicy. Sometimes literally, definitely politically. McAllen sits right in the center of border debates, immigration headlines, and cultural intersections that feel more like a global telenovela than small-town America. One Reddit user summed it up perfectly. McAllen is where you can buy a house, grab a dozen tacos for $6, and accidentally attend a quinceañera all in the same day. Cheap? Absolutely. Simple? Not always. McAllen might look like an easy win, but you'd better be okay with summers that feel like slow cooking, street signs in 2 languages, and political conversations that rarely stay simple. As the saying goes, everything is bigger in Texas, except home prices in McAllen. Apparently, this city never got the memo. Now, about the weather. McAllen has 2 seasons, hot And are you serious right now? July heat doesn't just fry eggs on the sidewalk, it turns you into the egg. And the mosquitoes? They're so organized they might as well have a union rep. On the upside, McAllen also boasts one of the lowest per capita carbon footprints in Texas, a border town that's quietly eco-friendly. Go figure. And hey, at least the potholes won't swallow your car like they do in Detroit. Here, they just gently slow dance with your suspension. So let me ask you, could you handle triple-digit heat and nonstop political tension if your rent stayed under $900? Drop your answer in the comments. Would you go full McAllen? And if you think this place is affordable, just wait until you see the town where buying a house might also mean inheriting a murder weapon. Number 7. Kansas City, Missouri. Kansas City is one of those places where you can find houses under $50,000 and a crime rate wild enough that you might get mugged while calculating how much you're saving on your mortgage. This is Kansas City, Missouri, barbecue royalty, the birthplace of jazz, a city of fountains, football, and surprisingly cheap real estate, if you know exactly where not to look on the postcard version. We're not talking about the glossy KC that shows up in travel ads. This is east of Troost Avenue, where home prices dip lower than some people's monthly rent in San Francisco. Let's get into the hard numbers. In zip code 64,128, the median home price sits around $43,000. The cost of living runs about 21% below the national average, and in many neighborhoods, average rent stays under $800 a month. Now for the reality check. Violent crime comes in at roughly 1,700 incidents per 100,000 people. Unemployment is higher than average. And infrastructure? Let's just say your tires are about to earn their paycheck. Potholes here don't mess around. They train for endurance. Still, something interesting is happening beneath the surface. Small investors and local developers are quietly buying up entire blocks. Art collectives are moving in. Food co-ops are popping up. Kansas City is having a low-key renaissance. It's just wildly uneven. One Reddit user summed it up perfectly. Kansas City is where you can buy a house and a brisket for the price of one Brooklyn parking space, but one of those houses might be haunted by a raccoon gang. Cheap homes are tempting, sure, but the reality hits fast. You're not just buying walls and a roof. You're inheriting decades of disinvestment, deferred maintenance, and creative problem-solving. Some people become landlords by accident. Others move in planning to flip a property and end up flipping out instead. It's like KC heard the phrase affordable housing and forgot to include plumbing in the deal. And let's talk about parking etiquette for a second, because it's a lawless art form here. I've never seen so many people casually invent parking spaces. Curbs are optional. Painted lines are merely suggestions. Pickup trucks park sideways like they're making a statement. And reverse parking just means parking like you've given up on consequences. Picture this: a quiet Kansas City street lined with trees. Somewhere in the distance, you hear a saxophone drifting through the air. Your mortgage costs less than your phone bill. It feels peaceful, almost perfect. Then you drive 3 blocks over and it's a completely different universe. That's the Kansas City contradiction. Beauty and chaos sharing a fence line. In McAllen, your biggest concern is sweating through your jeans. In KC, it's whether the raccoons in your backyard have unionized. So let me ask you, could you take on a fixer-upper in a sketchy neighborhood if your mortgage was under $400 a month? Drop a yes or a hard nope in the comments. Be real with yourself. Are you DIY brave or absolutely not? And if you think Kansas City is wild, just wait until you see the town where buying land might also come with a haunted tunnel and a glowing orb legend. Number 6. Greenville, Mississippi. Greenville is one of the rare places in America where you can buy a full-size house for less than the cost of a used jet ski and still hear live blues music before you've finished breakfast. Welcome to Greenville, Mississippi, sitting right in the heart of the Delta. This is blues country, Catfish Festival territory, and, somehow, a hotspot for shockingly cheap real estate. At first glance, Greenville feels like classic small-town Southern charm. Dusty streets, old brick storefronts, and neighbors who will absolutely wave at you, your dog, and anyone else walking with you. But beneath that friendly surface is a reality that's a lot more layered than it looks. So let's talk numbers. The median home price sits around $81,800. Average rent hovers near $670 a month. The cost of living comes in about 30% below the national average. Now for the other side of the coin. Violent crime rates exceed 1,200 incidents per 100,000 people, and job opportunities can be tough to come by. The local economy leans heavily on agriculture, with a small casino scene helping keep things afloat. The upside? A dirt-cheap mortgage and a front porch big enough to host an entire band. The downside? You might need that band to distract you from broken streetlights and infrastructure that's seen better decades. As one Redditor put it, Greenville is the kind of town where the gas station clerk knows your middle name and exactly how many people live in your house. The emotional trade-off here is real. You're not just buying a cheap home, you're stepping directly into history. Civil rights marches, blues legends, and deep Southern scars are baked into the landscape. Every street corner has a story. This is Greenville, where the humidity sits at about 97%, and somehow that's indoors. Now let's address the real locals, the bugs. In Greenville, mosquitoes don't just bite. You swear they file paperwork first. These things have wingspans. I once saw one lift a Chick-fil-A bag and look proud of it. Bug spray is cute but useless. Your best defense is a tennis racket and blind optimism. Picture the scene. You're on a wraparound porch with a glass of sweet tea in hand. Cicadas are buzzing nonstop. Somewhere nearby, someone's picking at a steel guitar. Barbecue smoke hangs in the air, and someone down the street yells, "Roll Tide," at absolutely nothing. You're paying about $700 a month to live here, and somehow it feels both calm and completely unpredictable at the same time. So here's the question. Would you live in a place with insanely cheap housing if it came with chaotic weather, aggressive wildlife, and lingering ghost stories? Drop a yes or a hard pass in the comments. And if you thought Flint had random disaster mode turned on, Greenville is running Southern Gothic Simulator at full power. Because if this feels wild, the next town comes with ghost towns, free land, and a backstory so unsettling it sounds ripped straight from a Netflix documentary. Number 5. Cheney, Michigan. There's a place in Michigan where the land is basically free, the houses are long gone, and your closest neighbors are mostly spirits, if you believe the stories. Welcome to the world of literal ghost towns. Cheney, Michigan isn't just inexpensive, it's abandoned, unsettling, and widely believed to be haunted. This was once a thriving lumber town back in the 1800s. Then came devastating fires, followed by a diphtheria outbreak, and after that, the legends took over. Today, it barely shows up on regular maps, unless you're using one made for paranormal investigators. Technically, real estate still exists here. You can buy land in the surrounding area for under $1,000 an acre. Financing it, though, is another story. Banks get nervous when the only comparable properties are grave markers. Current population? 0. Employment opportunities? Unless you're a ghost hunter, urban explorer, or forest ranger, don't get your hopes up. Crime rate? Also 0, but that's partly because there's no one around and no cell service either. Rent doesn't exist because there are no buildings. Cost of living is basically non-existent too, as long as you're cool supplying your own shelter, plumbing, and maybe a bit of holy water. And then there are the stories. The most infamous legend involves a woman accused of witchcraft who was buried in the local cemetery. According to the tale, she cursed the town, unleashing a diphtheria outbreak that wiped out many of the children and sealed Cheney's fate. One Reddit user summed it up perfectly. You don't visit Cheney. You get summoned there. Here's the wild part. You can actually own a piece of this place. But living there? That's a completely different energy. You'll get absolute silence, total isolation, and possibly glowing orbs hovering over your property at night. It's the only real estate market where your biggest concern isn't termites, it's angry spirits. And forget Wi-Fi. This isn't low signal. This is no signal, no towers, no backup. You're completely on your own. Hope your flashlight app works offline because once the sun goes down, it's just you, the trees, and whatever decides to whisper your name through the wind. In Kansas City, your neighbors might steal your Amazon package. In Cheney, they might drift straight through your living room. So what do you think? Would you live on land that's essentially free but very possibly haunted? Drop your answer in the comments. Are you team ghosts don't charge rent, or is this a hard no? One local urban explorer put it best. I don't believe in ghosts, but I still won't camp there alone. And if Cheney gave you chills, buckle up, because the next town comes complete with an abandoned tunnel, mysterious floating lights, and a ghostly brakeman who reportedly smells like lavender. Number 4. Moonville, Ohio. In Moonville, Ohio, land costs next to nothing, rent doesn't exist, and the ghosts make absolutely no effort to respect personal space. Welcome to Moonville. Population 0. But don't let that fool you. It's not empty. It's just very much not alive. This former 1800s coal town is famous for one thing above all else, the Moonville Tunnel. And depending on who you ask, it's haunted by at least 4 different spirits. One of them allegedly smells like lavender. Yes, really. If you've ever thought, I'd love to live somewhere that feels like real estate crossed paths with a horror novel, congratulations. This might be your dream location. To be clear, you're not renting a condo here. Moonville is officially a ghost town. No houses, no schools, no Starbucks runs. But you can buy land nearby for as little as $1,500 an acre. And if you're serious about off-grid living, this place isn't just off the grid. It never even met the grid. Crime rate? 0. Job market? You'll be commuting or haunting your former workplace. Cost of living depends entirely on how much sage, salt, and EMF detectors you decide to stockpile. Quality of life is peaceful, assuming you can ignore reports of lantern lights floating through the trees at night. One Reddit user described it perfectly. It's like living inside an episode of Scooby-Doo, except the ghosts don't always wait until nighttime. If you're brave or unbothered enough to build near Moonville, you'll get unmatched privacy, unsettling silence, and possibly a side hustle running a haunted Airbnb. On the downside, you might find yourself folding laundry next to the ghost of a railroad brakeman from 1859. Moonville is where Zillow says, no data available, and the ghosts respond with, boo. I get the appeal, honestly. The land is cheap, the forest is beautiful, and the night sky is unreal. But we need to talk about rural Ohio bugs for a second. These things don't bite, they attack. They're massive, aggressive, and seem to operate with intent. One flew into my thermos once and immediately started judging my life choices. Now picture it. A quiet morning in the woods, sunlight cutting through the trees, coffee in your hand. Absolute silence, broken only by birdsong, and maybe, just maybe, the sound of distant phantom footsteps on gravel. It's calm, it's surreal, and yes, it's more than a little unsettling. That's Moonville. So let me ask you, would you build a house in the woods if the land was dirt cheap, but came with built-in ghost lore? Drop a yes or no in the comments. And if you think Moonville is strange, just wait until the next town, where people report monster sightings, and abandonment is actually written into the law. Number 3. Portlock, Alaska. Portlock. Alaska is the kind of place with no zip code, no neighbors, and not even a working post office. Just decades of murder rumors, unexplained disappearances, and alleged monster sightings. If you thought things couldn't get creepier, buckle up. Portlock, also known as Port Chatham, sits on Alaska's southern coast and hasn't had a full-time resident since the 1950s. And no, it wasn't because the economy dried up. People didn't move away. They ran. The stories all follow the same pattern. Something was out there, in the woods, in the fog, dragging people away. Hunters vanished, bodies turned up broken. Locals whispered about a Bigfoot-like creature known as the Nantianek. After enough fear piled up, the town emptied out completely. Today, Portlock is officially abandoned, and technically, the land is cheap, unclaimed, and possibly yours if you're brave or unwell enough to try. Zillow, unsurprisingly, has nothing to say about it. Let's break this down. Population, 0, unless you're counting whatever's still lurking out there. Land prices can dip as low as $1,000 an acre, depending on access. Crime rate? Officially non-existent, mostly because there's no one around to commit crimes against, except you. Utilities? Don't make me laugh. Employment? Bring your own business or plan on wrestling salmon out of icy water with your bare hands. One Alaskan Redditor put it bluntly. If you hear screaming in Portlock, don't investigate. Just apologize to whatever it is and slowly leave. Sure, you'll save a fortune on rent, and the only traffic you'll deal with is moose. But there's no cell service, no grocery store, no roads, and no help coming. Just fog, dense forest, and the persistent feeling that something is watching you. So yeah, buy land in Portlock. Worst case, it's haunted. Best case, it's haunted and you become the subject of a true crime podcast. And then there's the Alaska daylight situation, which is its own psychological experiment. In winter, it's endless darkness, like living inside a vampire's vacation home. In summer, the sun refuses to set, and you'll be taping blackout curtains to your soul just to sleep. Time stops making sense when 3 a.m. looks like noon, and your only neighbor might be a cryptid. Picture this. You step outside your hand-built cabin. Mist snakes through towering evergreens. Your boots crunch over damp moss. Your breath fogs the air. Somewhere in the distance, a tree cracks. Not falling, just cracking. Silence follows. Still thinking that cheap land sounds like a bargain? Portlock isn't a town, it's a dare, as one local legend fan put it. Buy land there if you want, but don't expect Amazon deliveries or rescue teams. So let me ask you straight. Would you live alone in the woods where the last known residents fled for their lives? Drop a thumbs up if you're choosing adventure mode, or a thumbs down if this is a hard pass. And if Portlock didn't unsettle you, just wait until you hear what happened at the next town's schoolhouse. Number 2. Govan, Washington. In Govan, Washington, you can buy what's basically an entire town for less than the cost of a used Subaru, and it may come bundled with an unsolved murder mystery. Welcome to Govan, a ghost town that technically still exists, but only by the thinnest possible definition. It's rural, unsettlingly quiet, and so cheap it feels like someone forgot to add a zero. We're talking houses, barns, and full parcels of land listed for under $10,000. At night, the loudest sounds aren't sirens or traffic. They're your own heartbeat, the wind cutting through dry grass, or a door creaking in a schoolhouse that hasn't seen a student since Prohibition. Here's the situation. Population, 3. And yes, that count includes pets. Median land prices come in under $5,000 per parcel. Rent is basically a myth unless you're paying tribute to the local raccoons. Crime rate? Officially 0, mostly because there's no police department to file reports. Cost of living is practically non-existent, assuming you're prepared to supply your own water, electricity, and a healthy dose of paranoia. But here's where things take a turn. Govan has history, and not the charming postcard kind. In 1902, the local judge and his wife were brutally murdered with an axe. In the 1940s, another family was found dead on a nearby farm. And then there's the Govan schoolhouse, collapsed steeple, hollow windows, and the exact energy of a low-budget horror film set. One local posted online, "Living in Govan is perfect if you enjoy silence, wind, and the constant feeling that you're not actually alone." Sure, the price is right. You could probably declare yourself mayor, sheriff, and postmaster all before dinner. But that also means total isolation. And when it's 2 a.m., and your only neighbor is a crumbling schoolhouse staring back at you, you might start questioning what exactly you signed up for. Govan is where property is affordable, but the atmosphere is aggressively haunted. Let's talk small-town isolation for a second. You want peace and quiet? Govan delivers total silence. Need groceries? That's a 40-minute drive. Break your phone? Better dust off a paper map. Need help? You can shout into the wind. It won't respond, but it might whisper something unsettling back. And here's a fun fact that somehow makes it worse. Govan has actually been listed for sale as an entire town, not a single house, the whole thing. Zillow energy, but make it paranormal. So what's your move? Would you relocate to a ghost town if it meant owning land for under 10 grand? Or are you firmly in the Wi-Fi and DoorDash or nothing camp? Drop an M for move or a K for keep me far away. At least in Portlock, Alaska, the monsters stayed in the woods. In Govan, they left behind police reports. And if you think this place is wild, just wait. The next town gives away free land, but you'll never guess what's buried beneath it. Number 1. Bula, Pennsylvania. Bula, Pennsylvania is the kind of place where you can own land for free, or close enough that it feels free. But the deal may include a glowing ghost orb, a forgotten cemetery, and a tragic love story dating back to 1861. So yeah, totally normal real estate opportunity. Bula isn't really a town anymore, it's more of a rumor with paperwork. Originally founded by Welsh immigrants in the early 1800s, it was supposed to become a peaceful spiritual utopia. Spoiler, that plan did not work out. The settlement collapsed, nature moved in, and Bula slowly vanished into the woods. What's left today is a scattering of old foundations, a small cemetery, and a long list of unsettling stories told by hikers who swear they saw lights moving where no lights should be. And yet, somehow, the land here is still absurdly cheap. We're talking $1 and a handshake, cheap. Let's review the haunted math. Land prices have dipped under $500 for certain lots, often with no development restrictions at all. Crime rate? Basically zero, unless you're counting paranormal incidents. Rent doesn't apply because the buildings are just as non-existent as the town itself. Employment options are limited unless you work remotely or decide to open a side business selling sage bundles and EMF detectors. Quality of life really comes down to how comfortable you are with deep silence, dense woods, and unexplained lights drifting over moss-covered gravestones. One Reddit user summed it up perfectly. You don't move to Bula, you get pulled there. Cool, love that. Not unsettling at all. Yes, the land is real. Yes, it's legally available. And yes, if you decide to live there, there's a strong chance you'll end up featured in a most haunted places listicle somewhere on the internet. On the bright side, no HOA fees. This might be the only place in America where resale value depends on whether your ghost stories go viral on TikTok. Here's the part nobody warns you about when it comes to abandoned or semi-abandoned places. The bugs absolutely do not care about your paranormal situation. You'll be dealing with moths the size of deli sandwiches, mosquitoes that operate in coordinated units, and spiders who clearly lived there long before you showed up. You didn't move into their space, they're just letting you stay. Now picture this. You're sitting on your porch in early fall, tea in hand. Leaves crunch underfoot. Fog drifts low across the grass. And then, over in the cemetery, you spot it. A soft glowing orb floating above a collapsed gravestone. It's quiet. It's beautiful. It's slightly cursed. And somehow, it feels like home. So be honest. Would you live on haunted land if it was basically free? Like this video, if you've ever Googled how haunted is too haunted before committing to anything. Subscribe for more practical life advice like how to buy a ghost town on a budget and survive your first full moon. Because who really needs neighbors when you've got orbs, curses, and dirt cheap property taxes?